We got some answers today regarding that overhang collapse outside Propst Arena at the Braun Center.
It happened just before last night's Havoc game. I followed up to get the details today.
Around 6:20 last night, we were getting guests inside getting ready for the Havoc hockey game, and around 6:20 the ceiling behind me, you can see on that covered patio, collapsed.
Hockey lovers were in for a shock yesterday after part of the Braun Center collapsed before the Huntsville Havoc game. Luckily, there were no injuries reported, but the center, with the help of Huntsville Fire and Rescue, did have to evacuate the building before the game so the damage could be assessed.
They went ahead and recommended that we block off the entire inside the Bud Light Cafe, like I mentioned, just until we were able to get a structural engineer to come in. We actually had them here today. They were here this morning to do their initial assessment. It does appear that there was no structural damage, which is very good news. It appears that the failure was contained to the ceiling component.
The VBC was given the okay to still hold the game, though it started about 30 minutes late, and a couple of things led to the delay.
When the ceiling actually collapsed, there's a sprinkler system involved. There was electrical components that went down, so for maybe 15 minutes the credit card machines were down. Our generators kicked on after 10 seconds, but it takes some of those components a little time to reboot. So once that all came back up, our sound system was back up and operating, and we were cleared to allow people to safely come back in the building.
The center says they're grateful no one was hurt.
This is not a heavily foot trafficked area. This is a private entrance into the south side of the arena. That's where you'll find the UAH locker room, the Havoc locker room. So primarily it's staff and Havoc use. So there's it's not a public access area.
The VBC has set up barricades like this one, caution tape, and even has a security guard on site to make sure the public doesn't get anywhere near this damage. It's still a very dangerous area. Now I'm told the cleanup won't start until they get the official damage report from their structural engineer. And if you look behind me, there seems to be a crew taking a look at the damage right now. In downtown Huntsville, I'm Sydney Stallworth, WZDX News.